Welcome back to another episode of Sailing Windrows, boys and girls. We are back in Windrows, and you might have wondered, what was that all about? Who was the guy? And what boat was that? Well, quite a story. It's a trip from Southampton to Amsterdam on a Varantia 44. And it's because I was watching Erik Andera from the channel No Bullshit Just Sailing, and he said fear is just a lack of training. Now that made me think, if I want to sail solo for an extended period of time, like say 3 days in a row, then I kind of need to experience how that is, and without putting myself in risk, I figured how handy if I could just join a sailing trip from the Zeezeilers van Marken training school in the Netherlands. And that seems to work quite well for me. They had a trip from Southampton to Amsterdam, and I decided to join that. 2 other reasons. 1, it could help me to plan a bit more thorough. 2, the solo part. Can I sleep for 20 minutes, then have a watch, sleep, watch, sleep, watch, you get the drill. And how is it actually? The Solent, Isle of Wight, the Needles, Dover, Ramsgate. So I figured, let's try it out. And it started with basically flying to Southampton. So let's go. Just stayed in the Rivendell's guest house. It's actually marvelous. It's a nice English street. So now I'm gonna go and get myself over to the City Town Hall, Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, who is apparently located here. Okay. Another one is BBC Radio Solent. You might hear that. Right over there in the harbor. It's quite windy, I'd say. Like 4-ish, which is good. There is the P&O Cruises, and this is a ship. 44-foot trailer, Arianta. So yeah, interesting. Totally different. 3 other guys, 1 instructor. And I will spare you the details, but planning basically started straight off. We started at about 12, and the idea was to go sailing next day because first up was groceries. And what I found really handy is that the instructor, Jaap, actually brought a extensive list of stuff. We used the list to run also through the boat and check what was still there. We added the stuff that we wanted to add for our menus that we would be cooking during the trip. And then we went out and went for groceries to Asda. Quite funny to have so much stuff and quite an impressive bill actually. Going back and then starting straight off with the planning for the next day. One of my learning goals was to plan more meticulously, and what I really liked is that we worked with a master plan. I actually think I got one here. Let me see, because I brought some of this stuff. And the master plan is basically built up in 4 steps. There you have it. It's basically first looking at the charts, then second looking at the currents and tides, third looking at the weather, and then last looking at the crew. Yeah, doing it like this, filling out such a master plan, looking at the things that are given, for instance, the times at which certain currents start running in a direction, and then adding these times to it really helped a lot. And with that, after a good night's sleep, next day it was sailing. First off, straight into the wind, so motoring, but it was get out there and start doing. I don't know what about you, but in my book, that was a amazing sail. Going down to the Solent, having a current with you out to the Needles, being out there on the Atlantic, just playing about a bit, and then coming back in with the current behind you because you planned it properly. That was truly amazing. We docked at Yarmouth Harbor, which is a small harbor, and it was fun. So after a drink and some snacks, we had a good night's sleep, and the next day we explored the little town a bit. Second day, second sail. Yes, that was the city, but obviously we were there to sail, and we decided to go up the Bewley River, which is close by. But in front of the river, there is actually a sandbank that you have to get over. The draft of the boat is about 220-ish, I think. So we had to carefully plan that and learn that in the reeds, there is a nice graph that you can actually use to connect the points, and then you can all calculate it. Obviously, I normally do that via Navionics, which probably also works, but actually it's quite nice to do it on paper and to have the confidence that you can actually get over that bump. And when all stuff was planned, we basically set out to explore a river. Pretty relaxing. Pretty relaxing. Also fun to see all these yachts at anchor and follow the current, not necessarily the wind. You can get onto the river at a certain point of time but you also have to get off at a certain point of time. So we planned it properly, didn't hit anything, got out there, actually did some exercises like man overboard and learned some new tricks. Pretty neat. But we had to go to Kous because that is the water sport mecca, Valhalla, whatever. Clearly visiting Kous means that you need to go to some of these must-see places. After parking the boat in the marina with some nice racing yachts that also were used for training purposes, actually, we had a snack at the Anchor Inn, and then we went to the Royal Ocean Yachting Club, Racing Club, I think it is. We watched at the quite impressive row of cannons, actually, and we walked the promenade a bit. But there was one thing that we still had to do, and that was work on the planning for the next day. We had already seen that there was a wind prediction of 5 to 7 Beaufort south-southwesterly, which is not ideal if you're on the south coast because it becomes, as we say in Dutch, lage wal. So there's not a lot of sea room if things go wrong. And we wanted to go to Brighton. So Brighton has this funny thing that if you want to get into the harbor, there is another sandbank kind of in the front of it. So you kind of need to really look at the tides. And we sort of concluded that we had about half an hour of time, which was not necessarily very handy. And looking at alternative ports, we found Dover was the first one, which is about twice the distance. So imagine you've been out there on 5 to 7 Beaufort, and you want to go in and you can't, and you have to continue beating up into it for another 8 hours on your third day with that crew. We decided not to do that, and I think that was pretty good decision. It gave us a bit of extra time to play around the area, to visit some of these fortress islands, and to go to Portsmouth. So happy sailing, because that was quite a bit of wind. Quite a sail, and the music helps. I know, might be a bit too dramatic, but I thought it was applicable. So, you know the drill by now. New planning had to be made. This time, yes, for Dover or Ramsgate as alternate port. So after doing that, having a cup of tea and having a good night's sleep under the Spinnaker Tower, which was beautifully lighted in blue, it was time to depart. Basically, to start the crossing. So the instructor really trusts his charts. He also brought the newest, freshest, crispiest charts ever, which was really helpful. And knowing the charts and actually looking outside, you can have a certain confidence level to cross narrow get-throughs. One of them was right between the Fortress Islands and a sort of underwater dike kind of thing, where you could go through when the tide was right. And the other one was through which was called the Loo. I always think twice if I see names like that on a chart, because I'm like, why would I want to risk that? But Jaap was confident, so we went through, and I now kind of understand why it's called the Loo. Elke keer jij achter het roer staat, is het onrustig.
We zijn hier bij de Loo. Scheikers.
Brighton with the Seven Sisters going there. Half of the ship is asleep. All died.
Okay, we're here in front of Brighton. There's the yacht club of Brighton. There's the Seven Sisters. The yacht club is behind there, the ugly one. You see?
Oh, there's the entrance. That's quite a nice
concrete brutal.
Yeah, exactly.
Design of this place. There with Brighton, there's where Nick Cave is living there. You see the trees there?
Yeah, what's
left
there?
of the trees, Nick Cave, his house.
Nick Cave?
Yes, he's living there, yeah.
Alright, that's quite a nice cave.
And there,
Nick's Cave.
And there, the hotel, Thatcher was bombed.
Pier. Thatcher was what?
Bombed, so there was irate, planted a bomb in the hotel room. But at that moment she was not.
Jesus. Could have been dead. And the Seven Sisters, how do I count to seven? Like
French
1, 2, no, I mean, how do they know it is seven sisters? Because I've been counting them from some distance, but...
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Alright.
I don't know exactly. 1, 2, 3, 4. But there's a discussion if it's 6 or 7. But probably the reads will answer that question for you.
Well, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. See you next time.
Cheers. By now you probably heard the diesel engine. Fortunately there was some wind, because I don't really like diesel engines, especially for extended periods of time. So it makes me extremely happy if you can just raise the sails and sail.
Kan je merk zien?
As it sometimes goes in the night, there's not a lot of footage, because it's really difficult to make good footage during the night. Trust me. But there was another fun thing. We went around the corner from Dover to Ramsgate, because we had a splendid sail up to that moment. And we figured we could just do that last stretch because we would then have a better departing point for the day after. But there we kind of run into some weather because by now we had a north-northwesterly wind, which did not really help with the current that was following. You can actually see the speed on the map going around the corner, but after some hammering on through those waves, we made it to Ramsgate. We had our beer and some snacks, had a good night's sleep, and then the next day, really early, after planning it properly, we made our jump to Harwich.
Oh, we stonden niet aan. Nou, waar zijn we naartoe onderweg?
We zijn onderweg naar Harwich. Een mooie strakke hemel, strak zonnetje. We varen 5 knopen. Gezellige boel aan boord. En wat kunnen we nog vertellen?
Ik ga even naar de crew toe, hè?
Ja.
Nou, Jaap, Jan-Willem. Ilko. En we sluiten af.
Met Henk.
Dag.
Dankjewel.
So we made it to Harwich. Not everything on sale. There's quite a bit of an engine involved in it again. But that had to do with the weather as well a bit, because there was a sort of a high pressure area, and high pressure areas they're not that trustworthy. Anyway, we made it, we filled her up, we filled ourselves up, and we continued our trip to Amsterdam. You got it. That is not Amsterdam. Nor is it IJmuiden, nor is it the Netherlands. We ended up in Lowestoft because we made a meticulous planning. And every time we made the planning, we also kept track of the weather. And I here have the weather forecast, which was saying northwest 6 to 8 decreasing. And this 8 was possibly 8. But once we left Harwich, we checked one final time at 12, the Met Office. And then it was 7 to 8, possibly 9. Which was a little bit too much to our taste. So in the middle of the night, really literally at 10 past 12, I think we did something that is very good. We reconsidered our plan. We had a backup harbor. It was Lowestoft, and we decided to go to Lowestoft. So that's where we were. And then the morning after, early morning, 5 up, we departed for IJmuiden, following the storm and starting with quite some wind, covering some good grounds.
Zo de jongen uit. Hier.
We made it. Our second 24-hour sail. And yes, that checks off my final learning point. After meticulous planning, exploring the area of the Solent and the Isle of Wight, I have also 2 times been awake 24 hours in both instances with a 3-hour shift. Where in the first instance, I basically had only 1 3-hour shift. Every 20 minutes in that 3-hour shift, I woke up and I went up to the nav station. I went up to have a lookout. I actually have the paper here still, which tells me what I did. So at the first 24 hours, which was the Plymouth to Ramsgate, I checked the time, the course, the outlook, and any particularities, and I learned that actually that was not sufficient. So on the second time, I also noted the time, but I also noted the north and east coordinates, so I could plot it in the map. Would I ever want to? From the AIS, obviously. The course, whether or not the AIS was safe, and if I saw something on a collision course, the outlook, just looking outside, first looking inside on the AIS, and then looking outside, and if there are any particularities. The second one, I had 3 3-hour shifts, in which every 20 minutes I woke up. And my conclusion for that one is that I feel now quite a lot more confident. Not only by writing it down, I have a proper recollection of what I did. Also, having the instructor, having the other crew watch you and look at you was really helpful. Also in the feedback, they basically said, yeah, it was pretty funny to see that we had this ghost guy walking around. ghost guy because I decided not to say anything and just walk around, do my things, because the autopilot, although it's a great thing, doesn't really talk to you either. And you really want to get into the rhythm where you kind of are awake just to do what you need to do, kind of snooze, go to the toilet kind of situation, and then go back and sleep again. And I found that that really works pretty well. Yeah, I thought that was pretty amazing. I thought it was pretty doable. And I'm pretty confident that with this experience, I could now first do, for instance, a low stuff once myself, and or sail to Norway next year and potentially do that solo. So not sure if I'm going to do that, but I could, I feel. And that's giving a lot of freedom. So as I started with Eric from No Bullshit Just Sailing, fear is just a lack of experience. And by training and experience, I think I got more skilled and I'm feeling more confident. Thank you, crew of the Southampton, Amsterdam delivery. I think we did a great job. I really, really liked it. Yes, I sail solo, but in all honesty, I really love sailing with you guys. Instructor Jaap, man, I learned so much. Really splendid. Thank you so much. Your lectures on the reeds, the charts, your local knowledge, basically your meticulousness with which you planned the trips. I couldn't have asked for a better instructor. Thank you, and yeah, let's meet each other on the waters again, boys. So, hope to see you next time with the next episode of Sailing Windrose. As I'm not sailing a lot this year, there's not a lot of episodes, but I hope you stick with me for next year. And yeah, if you've liked this video, leave a like. If you would like to see how I continue, hit subscribe. And if you have a comment, feel free to drop it down below. Fair winds following seas, boys and girls. Cheerio!
Dat is hartstikke leuk hier. Ja, zal die leven, lang zal die leven, lang zal die leven in de gloria, in de gloria.